So I think just before we get started explaining the data, Adrian, let's talk about the precursor to that, and that's the two assessments that are 45 minutes, but they are kind of unique, aren't they? Because we're not only doing the traditional corporate questions, we're including the contemporary ones like climate, ESG and cyber, but also sector specific amongst our governance streams that we cater for, being health, human services, aged care, education and communities. Is that right?
Absolutely, Wes. That's exactly right. Each evaluation covers off quite a vast selection of different modules. As we say, we cover off around 71 different topics that we cover in those sectors. You can see I've got our results panel open, but yeah, we make a lot of assumptions here in this little demonstration that our people have been through their evaluation processes. This is sort of jumping in, they've completed their evaluations, they've completed their board governance review, which is the review of the board and how the board sits as a whole.
Yes.
And we're looking at 44 odd topics in that area. Mm-hmm. And then obviously we have our director skills where we look at those contemporary and professional and sector specific skills. So
fantastic. So what are we looking at here, Adrian?
So here is where we start with our board governance. This is our group report. So we're looking at the organisation as a whole and everyone's data. Mm-hmm. So we can see the number of directors here that have completed. We've got about 7 in this little community organisations demonstration that I'm going to go through. So obviously this one is specific to the community organisations sector.
Yep.
So we start with our board governance review and looking at the data here. Now, the big thing, what we call as our North Star, is our rating here on the left-hand side, where we have a 75 in this case. So this is our effective practice rating. Mm-hmm. So over our 10 years of experience, we've built up this definition of effective practice. So we say that GovernWith develops high-functioning boards.
Yep.
And the score we wrap around high-functioning boards, the effective practice for that is around the 90% mark. Mm-hmm. So what this gives you is very quickly a number that you can see where you sit against what we feel as GovernWith is a high practicing board.
Now, Adrian, is this instantly available once the very last assessment's complete by the last
Absolutely.
director?
Yep,
okay.
The system will put this together and we'll have this report instantly available once everyone's contributed.
And because it's software as a service, it's the whole strategy, governance strategy is available once that last assessment's complete.
Absolutely. Within seconds, we have our whole reporting system, we have our recommendation system, everything fires up.
Wow.
So when we look at our board governance results here, obviously we have our North Star, our 75, but we can then go deeper. We can look at each of the main modules that we talk about. So we cover off things like strategic direction, risk management and compliance. But as we dive even further into these, we start looking at the 44 governance risks that we assess in our board governance evaluation, including our newer contemporary ESG, workforce, cyber. We've got all these different areas that we now assess and we build up this really good picture of the board. How does the board sitting? How is the board performing? What don't you that you should be aware of and where should you be taking action?
Right.
So we have this rating system and you can see how we have our nice dark azure 91s. That's where we are hitting our effective practice. We feel those areas are really well developed and really singing. Whereas we look at areas like our ESG here, we've only scored 41%. We feel out the board is only starting out in that area and action is probably required. So the best thing we can do then is we actually come up and we have a look at our recommendations. So we've seen how our board looks, but we can dive into our recommendations straight away. So this strips out all of the color and basically highlights the areas where we feel where the platform uses its data to identify where action could actually be taken.
So Adrian, just to clarify, across the very top, they're the core modules of risk.
Yes.
And that's from a board point of view. And then underneath, these are the what you'd call the sub-modules or risk or sub-risks of that major risk category. Is that right?
Exactly. And then that's where we start making recommendations. So you can see we've got 10 odd recommendations here for the whole of that evaluation process. 3 of them are asterisked. 3 of them are the top risks. These are the ones you really want to take action with. So you could, if you remember back to the previous page, ESG was yellow. So ESG is here is highlighted as a top risk. So what we can do is engage with that And we can see, why did this trigger? There's a bit of an answer distribution here. How did our directors answer the questions related to ESG?
Mhm.
You can see there's a lot of unsure answers, and then a lot of early and starting. So a lot of people feeling uncomfortable where the organization sits with that
Wow.
particular skill. We then detail what's the effective practice? What could they be doing and looking at quickly in that area
Mhm.
to develop and improve? And then this allows us to create an action plan off the back of this. So we can create actions. We do suggest resources. We'll be adding elements of this webinar in as a new suggested resource straight after this. So you build up your little actions. It enables you then, if we scroll down this page, to look and create a small action plan of the elements that you want to target. So you can see what we're actually particularly looking at. You can see those resources. You can update your status in regards to it and where it sits, how the action's been processed. But then you can very quickly download an action plan. And then you get this nice little PDF report that can go into board papers, and it can then be easily discussed and brought up at the board level. Where are we sitting with our GovernWith action plan? How are these things being done?
Yeah, so Adrian, this is really, we're a transition of those three core capabilities of Boardroom Plus being, review and development and board succession. This is the development phase, isn't it? Because,
Absolutely.
We've targeted the risks that are disproportionately high so that's unique to that organization via those assessments. But also, a lot of our listeners today are volunteers that are doing that. That's their night job. So if they're going to do any development, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably the most efficient use of their time and most effective use of their very scarce time. Would that be right?
We're using our data to create a very targeted set of resource developments and basically addressing the capability issues as quickly as possible. So you're not spending that time doing a big long course or reading lots and lots of data or looking at different sort of webinars and things. You're getting very targeted education and resources to help you develop very quickly in an area.
So it's time efficient and governance effective, I think, would be sort of what comes to mind, because you're learning what needs to be learned now, not way out then, that bespoke. It's actually an instant governance program.
Absolutely.
I think fantastic. Thank you. Okay.
So we then step back and we'll start jumping into our actual director skills here.
Yep.
And so this is the other side, the second evaluation, where we look at the individuals and we start looking at the makeup of the board and who's there and what skills do they have to contribute. Where we like to start quickly here is just look at the overall picture of the board. Okay. So again, we've got 30 odd modules here that we assess. We've got professional and contemporary skills, and we've got our sector specific skills. So these relate to the community organisation skills again. Cool. When we talk effective practice in our director skills, we actually talk about hitting a target of 50%. We're looking for proficiency. We want people to understand the actual topic that they're conversing about. So they don't all have to be fully versed, academic.
So which raises the question, Adrian, how do you form that data? Obviously, there's questions, etc., around that, but I know behind the scenes there's a triangulated approach. Absolutely. So that people, I think it's a more inclusive approach and certainly a less subjective approach to just. Let's quickly talk about that for everyone on the call, because it's a really important point. Yeah.
So we, rather than just asking, are you good at this? We look at it from a perspective of, do you have the governance skills? Do we have the skills to actually apply what you know in the governance spectrum? Do you have the experience? What's your raft of experience over your years that you've collected that you're drawing on when you're applying it in a governance instance? And what qualifications do you have as a bonus on top of everything else? What do you add to this qualification-wise? So it builds up this picture, and the easiest way to quickly show that is dive into here.
Love it.
So we can see our skills, our qualifications, and our experience. So qualifications and experience are fantastic as long as you have the skills to be able to apply it. So our system triangulates those three pieces of data to create these scores. So it looks for those governance skills to be able to apply your experience and qualifications. And that's where we say hitting that 50% target, that means you've got the governance skills to be able to apply your knowledge and experience, and you have a minimum amount of experience to contribute. So the areas where you can very quickly develop.
And that's perfect, because straight away, someone who's got an incredible, 30, 40 years experience, but doesn't have the qualifications, they can be included in that conversation.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, someone that's overqualified with no experience or, no working knowledge, you can take that into account as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if they don't have those governance skills to be able to apply their knowledge, we can very quickly pick that area up and develop them in that area so they can actually contribute.
Okay, let's talk about the director skills, because I know people love seeing this map.
So yeah, this is our top director skills. And so each column here is an individual director, and you can see our modules play out in each row. So what we can very quickly do is we turn on our director strengths. We hit that idea of 50% proficiency. So everything that's showing here in green shows this map of the board and the director's skills that they contribute. So we can see very quickly what skills are covered really well. We have clearly, in this instance, we have some very academic people. They're hitting into these azure, dark blue areas, which means they've got all the big skills, but they've got a lot of supporting people behind them. There's a lot of proficient directors here, which means there's a lot of redundancy in the board. There's a lot of ability to discuss something quite widely with a lot of opinion. As you start to go down, you start to see gaps. So marketing communication, we've only got 2 people. So is there an opportunity there for us to improve? Strategic leadership and management, there's only 1 director with proficient skills here. So are we relying too heavily on that 1 person? And what happens if we lose that 1 person?
Yes. Right.
So that brings us into where we start to talk about succession and induction and recruitment.
Yeah, and this is my favorite bit, because I haven't seen this anywhere in governance. Let's talk about that, because just before we do, once we've got that instant governance program and we can identify the top risks in that bespoke program, really there's 2 ways to go. You either develop the team to mitigate that risk, or you recruit for it. Now, here we've got an interactive map right in front of us that says we're a bit underweight on marketing or whatever. Show us what it looks like in terms of board succession, because it then can be applied for recruitment. It can be applied to inductions as well to make that side of it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So obviously we take into instance, we know what's going to happen with our tenure on our boards. We know when board directors are coming up for renewal or if they're going to be leaving. So we can actually come back up to the top of the report here. We turn on our custom view and we can say, okay, we know next year we're going to lose 3 of our directors. So what's that going to do to our board? What skills are we going to lose? And how is this going to change our makeup? We now then come back to that director skills map, and suddenly we've lost all of those directors, and we can really now see, okay, asset management, we're down to 1 director with those skills. And, we've still got our strategic leadership with only 1 director, but we see where we suddenly in the future become weaker. So we can start thinking about, okay, what do we need to recruit for?
Yes.
What kind of experience do we want? We want to make sure that we've got someone potentially with advanced law skills. So we need someone that has qualifications in law. We need someone with finance and audit skills. So we can start to target what we're looking for and the directors we're trying to approach.
And so speaking to that point, Adrian, is it easy to get, say, if you've got a short list of potential directors and you're recruiting based off this, that their data could be added to this?
Absolutely. There's no reason why we can't run them through just the director skills, so that we can then turn them on against this data and we can see how they look in the board.
Right.
So you can already start to see from a recruitment point of view, if we bring this director on, are they contributing straight away from day 1? Or do we need to actually develop them in some areas where we just be aware of? Or, again, we start talking induction programs and we start talking buddies, director buddies. Who would be an ideal buddy on the board to pair someone up with for that, getting them to a high performance state very quickly.
Well, I think also to that point about inductions, that new director might bring a skill set, you hope, that is not present on the board and can lead on that to disseminate that and create their own inductions for the rest of the board, and vice versa, where they're weak, buddy up, to your point.
Absolutely.
Adrian, I also know that it goes a step further in terms of behavioural.
So when we go past this area in our director skills, and we start looking at our behaviour skills. So we talk about our hard professional skills, and we also talk about our soft skills, the personalities that come to the board and what they bring. So we look at a few different things here. We look at our personal traits and qualities, professional attributes and skills. We start looking at who the person is and what they bring. We ask questions about their induction process, their commitment. Do they know what they're getting themselves into? Leadership aspirations. So you can, again, for succession, who would like to possibly be the chair in the future or chair a subcommittee, help you make decisions around that kind of thing, and just general organisational knowledge. So how well do they know the organisation that they're serving?
And what does this look like in practice? This is great theory, Adrian, but if we see a board that's their behavioural style, their learning styles, are all clustered around what's
that's these last two little sections where we start looking at leadership, behavioural styles and learning styles, and we start getting into these maps of the board.
Yeah.
So the types of personalities, the analyticals, the ones that love data and just want to chew over it for hours. Expressives, that are really loud, noisy people in the room. We've got the drivers that are the ones that are pushing for everything to be done. And the amiable, sort of sitting back a little bit and just listening. It gives the chairs and the board themselves the ability to say, okay, we know that we might need to push this person to voice their opinion a little bit stronger, and you can start to account for the different personalities. We've had some great experiences where we've stumbled across boards that are nearly all analytical personalities, and it really explains why they never make a decision, because they're constantly just chewing the data.
Yeah.
But it's also great to look at the learning styles on the board and get a picture of the different types of ways people learn. So the people that like to have that physical report in their hands compared to others that may prefer to watch a video. So we've found great success now with mixing physical papers with actual video recorded versions of reports and things. So just being able to create these different pictures of the actual profiles of the board, and is that how you can work with it.
And is it easy to identify, say, if you're a chair or you're like a super admin or something?
The chair gets special permissions in these reports so that they can actually start to turn on identities through the actual.
Okay.
So in general, depending on the organisation, we can tailor the way this report's delivered. In most cases, everyone likes to see a de-identified form of the report. But for certain committee members, normally the chair will give a higher level of access, which will allow them to actually turn on identifying features and see who particular directors are and who they are in the mix of things. Helps form transparency and positive conversations.
Absolutely, and just opens up new ways of communicating more effectively. That's what I'm seeing. Have you seen anything like this, Neil?
Look, I haven't seen anything like this before, Wes, and I saw it on the agenda. I thought that looked interesting, but this has gone beyond my expectations, I must admit. I've seen this for the first time.
I don't know about you, but, the speed of execution of governance assessment and then straight into a plan, that would have to be pretty compelling to, people that you meet with on most
with it, not just who I meet with, but I'm on a board now where I just see the value of this stuff being incredible. Yeah.
But there is more. So if we jump into an individual's results, so when we get into an individual and talking about these results are instantly there after that an individual completes their own evaluations. Obviously, we have a picture of their board results. But what gets really interesting is their actual own individual director skills matrix. So again, talking about those skills, qualifications, and experience questions, it builds up a picture of the individual, and we can very quickly see where they're proficient, where they have that knowledge. The red tends to indicate that they may not have the governance skills in that area to properly apply their qualifications and experience. And the yellow indicates They have the governance skills, but they may lack some experience, and they would be benefit from more experience in that area. So we can then jump into a recommendation plan around
Just for that director, yeah?
Just for that director.
Wow.
And it highlights the areas where we suggest development. So again, you can see those top 3 asterisks. We only suggest working on 3 or 4 at a time. You don't want to try and tackle everything. Hit your biggest nail.
Yeah. So once again, that's instantly available once the last assessment's complete.
And again, you can create those action plans. You can look at the resources that are available to very quickly build up an action plan. There's the effective practice there. What should you be looking at to develop in that area? It creates an individualized action plan that, again, can easily be downloaded, included in papers, discussed with the chair.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
What comes to mind for me, and it's only just sort of popped in my head, Adrian, is that I know that there's a lot of, we work with a lot of volunteer boards, and what's top of mind for some chairs is that they want to make something, to give back to the directors who are contributing so much of their time. And that something like this, especially if they've got their own personal assessment, is really that gift in a way that they could go and self-develop outside of what they need to contribute to the organisation as well, because these insights are telling them what to work on next.
Absolutely. And it's tackling that capability-driven education.
Yes.
So what do I need to improve? And you can actually then sort of weed out some of that vastness of all the education that's out there and save yourself some time.
Oh, but not only that, you're a more effective contributor to the organisation you're representing, but opening up potential opportunities in the future because you're getting more capable.
Yeah, as you said, this is potentially something to contribute to a CV.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Love it.
So that covers the majority of just the simple things that we can do with this. Obviously, there's more stuff we can start talking into our other products and our executive reviews and our peer reviews. There's lots of things that add on. So,
we essentially, that means we can grow with the organisation. The needs never get exhausted. So, but this is Boardroom Plus. I think that's great. We're going to close off today. It's a big topic. There's a lot of competing interests outside of what we're talking about that it's important, I think, just to dampen it down and make it real and actionable. Thank you again for stepping up and showing up. And I think we'll end it right here. We're going to say bye for now.